Hi, I'm Allison Cook, and I'm the Business and Government Information Librarian here at CSU Libraries. In this video, I'm going to go over annotated bibliographies, how to create them, why we use them, and tips on how to generate citation lists and making your annotated bibliography the best it can be. So just to start off, these are some of the business subject areas that I am responsible for. Each of the librarians here at CSU Libraries specializes in specific discipline areas. So this is a list of all the areas that I'm a specialist in. And so criminal justice, political science are just a few of those. So if you ever have questions, maybe not necessarily in criminal justice, but in any of these other subject areas, I can help. I'd be happy to help and help you with research, assignments, citation help. Really, we're very versatile, uh, specialists. So anytime you have a question, just call, email, drop by, and we'd be happy to help you. So why do we use annotated bibliographies? What's the point? Well, the main reason is to track your research, to keep a log of all the sources that you're finding and why they're important to your research. A lot of times research can be um, generate a massive amount of information and sources. So an annotated bibliography really helps you keep track of your own sources and why you are using it and what in the source is going to help prove or disprove a research question. It helps summarize the sources for similar reasons on why you would want to track them, but um, research papers don't happen in one day. They a lot of times you have to stop and start. So by summarizing the source, you can look back and when you're remembering that particular source, why is it on your list? Well, writing a short summary can help you remember and why that source is important to your research. It also provides credibility to your research, especially while you're a student. It'll show your professor the effort and your thought process behind the sources you're selected and really shows that a thoughtful process of resource selection was done to generate your research and prove, disprove, argue your thesis. It also helps the reader of your research. So, you know, depending on who's going to be reading your research, whether it's your professor, peers, colleagues, an annotated bibliography, even outside of being a student, is important because it tells the reader of your research why you use these sources. Maybe somebody might recognize a source and find it odd that you cited it. Well, an annotated bibliography provides a little bit of insight briefly that why you selected it and what parts of it you thought were important to include. They seem unnecessary, but they really are helpful to the researcher as well. Especially when you start doing research that requires pages and pages of a bibliography, that's a lot of sources. It's hard to remember why each source you use, why you selected it, especially when you're starting and stopping in the middle of your research process. So it really helps you as well to keep your thought process going on why a certain resource is important to your project. And some resources, like when you use a book, or you're citing from the same journal, you're not going to use the entire book or the entire journal. You're citing bits and pieces of different work from other authors. So when you have a book, whether it's electronic or print, it's important to jot down in a summary what part of that book you're used. And sometimes you'll find a resource, have to put it down to go to another, stop your research, start it back up. This provides you a smoother research process, so you're not nearly as stressed and overwhelmed when you need to find a source again to cite it in your research. So getting started, where can you find sources? I've created another video that I will send to your professor that gives a brief tutorial and example on how to find resources through CSU libraries. Our library website, the homepage, is a really great place to start when you really don't know where to start. Um, Galileo is our database of databases. We have a ton of resources that are available in there, and in my other video, I go through ways that you can search it more efficiently. So it takes the frustration out of finding your resources. Um, it takes out that frustration to make it a smoother process and save you time. You'll find our library catalog where you can find electronic books, print books, a lot of journals that we have that are in print, and some of the electronic journals that are in Galileo, but not all of them will appear in our catalog. It's a great way to request sources that we may not have. And you can also download ebooks from some of the sources in Galileo. So it's a great place to find resources as well. Merlot too is another great source of information. It's a scholarly open access resource, and it's Merlot is a conglomerate of universities that produce content that is not published in subscription-based services. So while it's free, it's very good content, scholarly. It takes a lot of training to become a peer reviewer for Merlot. So it's not just stuff that people slap onto a website. There's a lot of great information on there. And you can also see different perspectives on a topic, on how faculty and other students researched similar topics. So it's tempting to want to search Google during the research process, and in the beginning of your research process, it's not necessarily a bad idea to get what different topics are talked about that Google is seeing. But it really takes way less time to just go through Galileo and to search the resources through there. Even using Google Scholar, a lot of times you'll find scholarly material, but it'll take you to a paywall, or it will take you to a link that is in Galileo anyway. So a lot of times you should just skip the Google search unless you're in the very beginning looking for different resources to kind of generate ideas on your topic. It's really just quicker and more efficient to go to Galileo. Another tip is citing immediately. This is because as quickly as you find a resource is as quickly as it can be forgotten or lost in your web pages of searching. And it saves time for when you have to go back to it to be able to locate it again. It also is very helpful to just cite immediately, because when you're creating your bibliography or works cited page, you have the citation right there. You can just put it in your, it's already generated for you. So you just put it in your works cited or for a footnote, and it's right there. So tracking sources, there's lots of different sources that you can use to track your research. I personally use, and I can show you an example of how I use Google Sheets. It's free. And I prefer Google Sheets for this purpose because Microsoft Excel has a lot of features that are great for like accountants or businesses, but when you're just generating a list of some sort, you don't really need all of that. So it's a simplified version of Microsoft Excel, in my opinion. There's lots of third-party software that you can use for citations, EasyBib, Zotero, and you can also set up folders in Galileo and GilFind, which I show in my other video, to organize your research so you can get back to it. You can also save your searches. So if you have a source list that you generated for some really great keywords, um, you can save that search, and you can go back later and it'll generate that source list again. And like I said before, you might want to do this before you even start researching, because once you have a plan beforehand, it makes the process a little quicker and more efficient, because you've already have your plan on how you're going to have your plan on how to already save and cite your research. You don't have to think about it later. You can just start almost like a factory line. Okay, this is a good source, cite it, log it, and we're done. So how to cite? Depending on your subject area, most researchers and faculty will require you to use one of the three um, most well-known citation styles: APA, MLA, or Chicago style. Your professor will usually let you know which style you should use for your research assignment. And a lot of times disciplines typically use a certain style. So a lot of the social sciences and sciences will use APA. Some of the humanities based subject areas like history, art history, they'll use MLA. And this is because the citation will focus on a different part of the resource. So for APA, it puts a little more emphasis on the date, and for the sciences, that's a lot more important, because most of the time you want something that is very current and recent, or you want to be able to see right away how current a source is, so you can determine whether it's timely and relevant, or sometimes outdated health information. It's not going to be relevant and it's obsolete. So the OWL, it stands for the Online Writing Lab at Purdue University, is one of the best resources you can use to find citation styles. They not only just give you the for how to cite books and websites and journal articles, but they give you examples on how to cite them. And they also provide citation styles for kind of obscure things. For example, a tweet. If you're arguing that somebody tweeted something and that led to their conviction because they admitted something, well, you're going to want to cite that tweet that led to their conviction. How do you cite a tweet? So the OWL Purdue gives you how to cite it, and it'll give you an example to show you what it would look like. And then, of course, print citation manuals are great to use as well. The library has a copy, actually more than one copy, for the main three citation styles. So you can check one out here, or you can even purchase one if you wanted to. Now, many programs and databases will generate their own citations. And this is a great starting point. There's really nothing wrong with, copying and pasting it, but there's a big but. They're generated by a machine. So when a machine generates a citation, it may confuse different names, different parts of the citation with different other elements. So this can be especially true when books have more than one author, or a journal article has an et al. To it. A lot of times they'll forget the et al. It has many authors to it. Sometimes it confuses dates too. So when you're using a citation that was generated from software or a database, you really want to go double check that that's the correct format and that everything is accurate and reflected correctly in the citation. Some professors are very strict on having a correct citation, so it's important to double check. So the actual annotation. Now, The annotation of an annotated bibliography is a little different than an abstract. It is usually just around 100 to 150 words that briefly summarizes the work or the part of the work that you're choosing to use. You want to describe what's in it, what is the information source cover, and what's the point of it, what's the purpose. And it also gives you a chance to evaluate the source. Um, why is it helpful, or why does it help you disprove a point of a part of your research question? It helps you say this source is authoritative in this area of criminal justice, but maybe not so much in another area. So it also provides an opportunity to the reader of it why you included it in your research. Your annotation should also address accuracy. Um, how do you know that the information in the source is accurate? Or maybe you know it's not accurate. Why are you including this information in your research? Um, what's the relevancy? As I just mentioned, why would somebody include inaccurate information? Well, it might prove a point of a legal theory that, or a social justice theory. So it tells the reader, and it helps you remember why this piece of information is relevant, and also tells who's the intended audience. Not all research is created for the same person. So for this annotated bibliography and research, the audience is your professor, but sometimes it's meant to be towards students, but high school students, or students for a younger age, or for experts. So it tells the relevancy and the authority of the source of why it is important to include in your research. Also, the currency. Um, when was it published, and why does it matter that it was published then? If it does matter that it has to be current or historical. So that it gives you an opportunity to include that as well. So that's all I have for annotated bibliographies. One other thing that I wanted to provide was in a brief example of the spreadsheet that I use that I find very helpful for tracking my research. And I will give the link to your professor so she can disperse it. If you want to use it, great. If not, that's fine too. Feel free to adapt it. There's no right or wrong way to track your research. It's whatever is helpful for you. And this method is very helpful for me, but you might find a completely different way. Or you might like my idea that I have, but you want to change it a little bit. So this is the spreadsheet that I created in Google Sheets. CSU, if you weren't familiar already, CSU provides you with a Google subscription account where you can save the articles you download and all sorts of documents to your Google Drive, and it gives you an unlimited um, amount of space to store it, which it can be really helpful because documents and photos, one isn't that much data to use, but it can add up quick. So it's very helpful that you can save copies of ebooks that you want to look at later, or journal articles. So that's another reason why I use a spreadsheet, because I can keep a lot of my research all in one place. So, it's easy to find. So this is just the cover page of it. You're going to want to make a copy of it if you use it. Just click on File, make a copy, and then you can edit your own. These are links to my research guides that I've created. I have one for criminal justice, and these are links to the library homepage, subject guides, the entire list of all of them created by librarians, our library catalog and directly to Galileo. I have a place where you can store your keywords, the ors and ands. So concept one, you could use criminal justice and capital punishment and Supreme Court of the United States. If you use the ands, it'll include all of the terms. The ors you can use for synonyms. So something like capital punishment, it may not be in some databases. The death penalty may not be a helpful search term, so you want to use capital punishment, or maybe the death penalty is a better one. So it gives you different wording, and it helps generate keywords before you start your research, and you can try different combinations to see what works and what doesn't work. And then I created checkboxes so you can keep, or if you decide one string of search terms was really helpful, you can check it and it'll note that those were good sources, keywords to use. Now, why would you keep the words that don't use? Well, I know a habit that I have is sometimes I'll keep using the same word inadvertently, not realizing it, in different strings of search terms. So by writing down all your search terms, you can avoid using the same ones, or you can remember a combination that didn't work, but the words with another combination of search terms work. So it's just helpful to keep track, especially when you're dealing with a lot of sources. So this is a quick sheet of, you know, the sources that you find, and you can, just quickly jot down things for as you go along. So it's just a quick source list for just keeping track of the resources without a big production about it. And then I have a literature review form that isn't really intended for this class, but it helps keep track of your sources. And these are just areas that help me in my literature reviews that I usually have to do. But it helps me remember, especially when looking at a lot of journal articles, the research question of what they were trying to answer. And if they're studying different institutions or different groups of people, I can note that here. Keep the citation notes, any areas of reflection that are important to remember. And then I also adapted it to an annotated bibliography. You can, as you're going along, you can write your citation, a quick annotation, and obviously you wouldn't be turning this in, but it can also be a nice way to save all your sources. So let's say you lose the file of your annotated bibliography, you can go to your spreadsheet and it's all right there. In the other side of this, I gave examples of how you can use these lists. So this is just information from a few examples from a literature I did about library impact on student success. I didn't put anything in there. So you're free to use these if you want, if you find them helpful. By all means, use it, adapt it. It's just one way that it can be used to help. And I wanted to show you really quickly one other type of citation list. This was for a literature review, so you could easily adapt it for just an annotated bibliography. But this is a little bit simpler of a list, if you don't want all the fancy things that I put into my first sheet that I showed you. So So this is my contact information. Feel free to email me, call the library. You can message me in Google Chat and in your Gmail or Microsoft Teams. I'm here really to help and serve you guys, so I'm always happy to answer questions and help with research. So I hope that gives you a little bit of help for your annotated bibliography, and I will hopefully see you in the library soon. Okay, have a great day. Bye.